Janice with Needles and Fashion, and I'm here for another tutorial to show you how to do the origami mini skirt just in time for Valentine's Day. Now what you're going to need for this particular portion of the tutorial is tape measure. You're going to need plenty of pins and a marker for your fabric. Now I have exactly 4 yards of fabric, which is 56 inches wide, and what I did was I folded it into 4 pieces because when you get your fabric it has natural fold, so I fold each half in half and cut straight down. So I have 2 pieces that are cut exactly in half that are 4 yards long. Now before I got to this point, I went ahead and cut 6 inches off the edge of my fabric for my waistband, and it's more than enough inches that I need for my waistband, but I want to make sure that my pieces are consistent. So the next thing you're going to do after you cut your fabric out is fold this in half and make a little slit in your fabric where your half point is and make a mark, which I did. Next, you're going to take the measurements of your waist, mine is 30 inches, and you're going to add 10 inches. You're going to divide it in half and then add 10 inches, so that's 25 inches for me. So I'm going to measure out my 25 inches, aligning my half point, which is 12.5 inches, at my midpoint slit for my fabric. And I'm going to mark what will be my side seams for my fabric. The next thing I'm going to do is create 1-inch slits in my pleats in my fabric. I'm going to eyeball this because we all know what an inch looks like. So I'm going to make 4 1-inch slits on both sides of my center back because we're working on the back piece. They don't have to be exactly perfect. This is for the bubble portion of your front skirt. So I have my 4 pleats on the left side of my center back, and I'm going to pleat the right side. Again, I'm going to do four pleats here. So as you can see, I have my 4 1-inch pleats for my fabric, which gives me a very nice skirting detail here. The next part I'm going to do is fold in my pieces for my back. Now what I'm going to do is fold in my first piece. So I'm going to take my fabric at my side seam that I marked, and I'm going to fold over my fabric. Now I'm only folding over my fabric to the center back line which you marked in the beginning, which is ultimately the slit that you made, which is half of what your 4 yards of fabric is, less than 6 inches. So I fold this into the center back and just smooth out my fabric, and I'm going to do that on both sides. So I'm going to grab my other side here. I'm going to pivot my fabric down a little bit for visibility and make sure that this is aligned. And what this is going to do is create the actual skirt of your back piece. Same thing with the front. It's going to be exactly the same function you're going to do. I'm just going to put a pin in both to keep it together because I have more folds to do. And now we're ready to get on to the second piece. Just fold in my fabric. Now I'm going to take my fabric from the left side and I'm going to fold it in. And I'm going to come down to 2 things happen. One, my salvage edge reaches the crease that I just created. And the edge here creates a natural diagonal from your front piece. I'm going to do that on both sides, and I'm going to pin. Now that I've done that, I got one last action, is to fold both my sides to the edge. Now I'm going to take the very end of my fabric and I'm going to fold it and align this corner with my new side seam. And you're going to make sure that your fabric is flush. I'm going to do that on both sides. So there you go. You pretty much have your back piece. I'm going to go ahead and pin here. And I'm going to go ahead and pin the other side. Now once I do that, I'm ready to cut a piece of my fabric, which will be the excess here. So I'm going to grab some scissors and show you how to get to your next piece. So I'm going to go ahead and cut off my excess fabric. As you can see here, when you lay your fabric flat, that there creates a visual seam line for the edge of your skirt. What you're going to do is make sure you do that for both sides, and you're going to cut off the excess fabric. Now I cut this with about a 5/8 of an inch away from the edge. So I want to create a little bit of a drape. Do the other side now. And it's something you can visually see. I don't know if it's how visible it is for this video, but it's something you can visually see. So you will not, have a situation where you could potentially cut your fabric, because the indent is definitely there. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can always make a marking with your marker for where you need to stop. Now that I cut off both my edges, I'm going to take this piece off, this pin, and I'm going to drape this just a little bit below and align it with the sides, just to make sure I got good draping here. And this happens for both sides, so you have even exchange on both. So now I move my fabric to the table, and I'm going to make some markings for my sewing. So I'm going to make a line here at my center on both sides of my fabric, and I'm just going to put a symbol there. I'm just going to put an H there for both pieces so I know where I need to sew that at. Make a mark here for where this pivots. I'm going to make a mark here. So I can now remove this pin and remove my pins from the middle. And then we're ready to go to the sewing machine. Right now is I'm going to sew the salvage edge of my fabric together. So you're going to line everything starting from your pleats all the way out to your end. And I'm going to sew about 1/4 of an inch, maybe a little bit less, and seam my edges. And you may wonder why I'm doing it this way. The salvage edge of this fabric, for this particular pattern, it's not going to be visible. If you're not an experienced sewer or you don't feel comfortable doing this without pins, by all means pin your salvage edge together before you sew this. Now I'm at my center back. And I'm going to fold my pleats in the direction of the back. And you're going to do this all the way down to the end. Now that we have the entire salvage edge of our fabric sewn together, we're going to find our markings for our first fold, and we're going to put them together. I'm going to fold my fabric out of the way. And I'm going to pretty much eyeball it down to the edge of the fabric. Now, again, if you're not comfortable doing this, then I suggest that you definitely pin your fabric and create your straight line going down. Because I do this very often, I can pretty much eyeball it. I'll rethread here really quickly. And when you're doing this, you want to make sure that you're using a needle that's appropriate for your fabric. I do have my jean needle in here so that it doesn't break during the process, because this can tend to get fairly thick towards the end of our process here. So I'm just going to show a straight line here. Make sure everything is aligned. So we got our first piece sewn together, and I can give you a quick visual of how that looks. We have our skirt piece for the front and our skirt piece for the back. Already done. Starting to come together. I'm going to take this to the table and make sure I have my measurements correctly for the next piece. This portion of this particular pattern, I'm going to go ahead and recreate my fold because I have my front piece and my second piece already sewn. I'm going to fold down just like I did during the first portion. Align my seams. And I'm going to take my pre-threaded needle and I'm going to make some darts because it's not going to be done with the sewing machine. So I'm going to take the front, the second piece, not including the front, and just sew my corner here. I'm going to cut that and do the same thing here at the bottom. And make sure you still have that diagonal skirt line, and I'm going to make sure I don't capture the front of my skirt. I'm going to do the same here. I'm just going to put a couple in here because the other side is going to overlap. I'm going to continue on over to my other side. I'm going to fold it over. Down just like we pinned. And I'm going to thread it here at the crease. Making sure you're not catching the front part of your skirt. And lastly, I'm going to do my other corner. Make sure I don't have the front of my skirt in there. Now the basting that I'm doing here is going to stay, because not all portions of the skirt are going to be sewn, because we need a natural flow to the front and the back. So I cut that, and I have my skirt dart sewn together. I have my natural curve. I'm going to fold this last piece up here that we cut here. And here. And I'm going to go ahead and dart these two pieces and take it over to the sewing machine. So back at the machine, now that you have everything darted and it's not going to disassemble, you're going to put your fabric on the side and sew the side seam. I'm going to use a little bit less than the 1/4 inch. Make sure you catch the top part of your front skirt so it doesn't disassemble. I'm just going to sew all the way down. And what I'm doing is creating a natural side seam to connect the front and the back pieces of my skirt. So okay, I'm done with the front side, the first side. I'm going to go ahead and go on to the other side. I'm just going to turn this over so that you can see what I'm doing here. And if it's better for you, you can go ahead and iron it down. And you're pretty much now done with your back piece. And you can see here how it falls. None of my fabric is coming out loose. And now I'm ready to go ahead and attach this to my front piece. I have the front and the back of my skirt with right sides together. And I'm going ahead and sew the side seam. I already did my right side. I'm working on my left side now. This is not my left, I'm working on my right now. I'm going to start sewing this about 6 inches down because I'm going to insert a zipper on the side. So I line my fabric. I have a pin here for guidance. Make sure my fabric is aligned up top. Place my fabric here. And make sure everything is aligned down because you want this to be very precise. My back is longer than my front, which is the look that I was going for. It's just a design flaw, but I want it to be very asymmetrical, so I'm not going to make any adjustments to that. I'm going to start here. And again, I'm using a very small seam here because I don't want to catch any of the extra fabric and change the shape of the skirt. Now I got those two seams together. I'm pretty much finished with the bottom half of my skirt. Now I'm going to assemble my waistband.